it's Kim. Thanks for tuning in to another video. Today's video is all about plants, and I'm going to take you along with me as I complete a few plant chores. Now that it's spring and now that the seasons have changed, it's time that I kind of spruce up a few of my plants, and I'll take you along with me as I do that. Today's video isn't going to be super chatty because I kind of want to just throw in some chill music and go through all the things. But before we get started, I do want to take you along and kind of show you exactly what I'm working with and my plans for today. And then I'll pop back in a little later on at the end of the video and show you a recap of everything I was able to get done on my plant chore day. And I'm hoping this only takes like an hour or less, seriously. It's bright and early in the morning, and I actually figured today was like the best day to do it because my nails are looking so super terrible. Hope you can see that. Got like this one's popped off. It's quite ridiculous. So this is probably the best day that I could be digging in dirt just before my nails are gonna get done. Okay, so I'll take you through what we have going on. I'm actually on my dining room table. Normally I would be doing this in my basement, but if I filmed there, you would probably not be able to see anything. It would be super dark. So I figured this was the best place to do it. I laid out some paper on the table and I have my potting mat right here. So I'll show you exactly what we're gonna do. First things first, I need to mix up a new batch of soil. So I'll show you how I do that and what all goes into that, and those are those containers over there. And here is my little caddy that I normally take around the house with me while I'm doing plant stuff. So I have some things in here like gloves, trimmers, what are they called? Clippers, cutters, whatever, fertilizers, things of that nature. I have some moss because I do need to add some moss to a plant, which you'll see soon. And then all of my victims, or actually the plants that I have today that need some tending to. And then back there I have the pots that I intend to use to pot those up. And all the way in the back, that's my Big Mama Albo Monstera that is going to be potted up into a larger pot today. So I think I have everything together and in place, and I believe I'm ready, so let's get started. All right, to walk you through what I'm going to do today, I know this all looks like a mess, but I have some plants. These are some propagations that I need to get potted up into their own pots. I have a few plants in leca, which are those light expanded clay aggregate balls that I want to put into soil. So that's that one, and also this plant I need to put into soil. And then this was a little cutting that I'm gonna combine those two together. This is my pilea that, as you can see, is leaning, I'm trying to make you see that. As you can see, as you can't see, as you can see, is leaning over out of the pot. This one really needs to be put into a bigger pot, so that's what I'm gonna do. I have my pink princess cuttings. I have 4 of them that I rooted up, and I'm gonna pot them together with the mama plant. That's like the base of the plant. Gonna put all of those together into one pot. I have some cuttings that I need to put in their own pots as well. And what else? My Albo Monstera, like I said, needs to be put into a larger pot. This one needs to be put into a larger pot as well. It's growing in moss, and I'm actually going to leave it in moss. I don't have the best luck with burrow marks, variegated or otherwise, so it's happy in this, and I'm gonna leave it in this, and I'm okay with that. I have my Florida Ghost here. This is one cutting. I was trying to wait until the other cutting was ready to be potted together, but I don't think she can wait. So I'm just gonna pot her up into her own pot with some soil. All right, so first up, we're going to mix up the potting soil. Okay, so my potting soil consists of a few parts. Normally starts with just a regular bagged mixture, and then I'll add a few amendments to it to give it some nutrients and better drainage and so forth. And normally when we're in the swing of the growing season, I would likely keep this in a larger container, but that one's in my attic. I already cleaned it out and everything, so I'm just gonna go with what I have here. So this is some that I have left over, and then you're gonna see me mix up some more. So we have, oh, first things first, we have the actual potting soil, which this is the one I currently have. I prefer to use Fox Farms, the ocean one. I think that's what it is. It's in like a turquoise container, but this is the one I have at the moment because I was running low and I needed to get something from a local hardware store, you know, a few months ago. So I just got that instead of placing an online order or going to the nursery. And then I have some cocoa coir, which is good for keeping drainage, or I'm sorry, keeping moisture in your plants. It's supposed to help to give the potting soil moisture when it needs it, not too much over time. I have some activated charcoal, which is good to take out impurities from the soil and to keep it nice and fresh. I also have some worm castings, and I put these all in containers just from Walmart, just because it's easier. Otherwise, I didn't want to have like a bunch of bags like these sitting around. But these are worm castings, and it's a form of a fertilizer. And then I do have, not in its container, but some bark. Some bark. This is pure fir bark. And this is one that I actually like to use. The brand is Reptibark. You can find this actually in pet stores if you are so inclined to go to pet stores. But I like it because the sizes of the pieces are not too big. Miracle Grow sells like an orchid bark that you can get from your local hardware store, but I find that those pieces are a little too big, or a little bigger than I prefer them to be. So I like the size of these pieces. They provide a good amount of aeration to the soil. And then another thing to help add air into the soil is perlite. I have my perlite here. And I also normally use another brand that I can't think of off the top of my head, but this one will do. It's not my favorite, the Miracle Grow, because I find that it's a little dusty. So that's that. And also I will normally sprinkle in some fertilizer, some Osmocote fertilizer. This one it says flower and vegetable, but I feel like inside of this container is the other Osmocote with the pink and white label, not the green and white label. I'll put it on the screen if I can remember, but that's the plant food that I'll mix in there. And then on the top, I usually dress this with a systemic. And what this does is this helps prevent houseplant pests. Not all of them, but most of them. And you are to put a certain amount according to the instructions. Always read your instructions. But a certain amount into the soil or on top of the soil, and then it gets watered in over time. And every 8 weeks, you should be replenishing the systemic in your houseplant soil. So those are things that I kind of top it off with. I don't like to mix the fertilizer into here. I just sprinkle some on the top of the plants when we pot them up. And I'll just do it right on top of what's already in here. So my general formula is about 50% of the potting mix, or whatever potting soil I'm using. So I just eyeball it. I don't measure anything. And potting soil typically already has some amendments in it. Like it might have some bark in it, might have some cocoa coir and some perlite, but I just like to add my own. And then to that, so that's 50% of the potting soil, and then the remaining ingredients make up the other 50%. So we'll put a good amount of the orchid bark, and then probably the same amount of perlite. Is this even open? Oh yeah. Same amount of perlite. And see how this one's a little dusty. It's not my favorite. And then on top of there is when I'll put in a few of these other things. So the activated charcoal. Maybe just like a small scoop of that, not too much. And worm castings, that also, like I said, acts as a fertilizer. Not too much of that either. And I think that's pretty much it for the base of the ingredients. To give you a bit of a closer look, as you can see, I did the 50%, about that much from there to there of potting soil. I know this is like a little crazy, but I don't do measurements. So I did about 50% potting soil, and then the next layer I did, I would say, about 1/3 of the orchid bark, 1/3 of the perlite, and then the remaining third of that half, I know I'm trying not to do fractions, but the remaining portion of that is the activated charcoal and a little bit of the worm castings. And then I'll mix all of that up. I normally have a long handled spoon that I cannot find at the moment, but we'll just mix that up until everything is well incorporated. All right, now everything is mixed up and this is what we got. Everything is pretty much well incorporated. And I have two plants, larger pots that are gonna need soil. So I'll start with those, and then hopefully this is enough to do everything. But if I do run out, I'll just mix up another batch as we go. All right, so the two that need soil would be my Pilea peperomioides, and you can see this one branch is leaning over, so I'm gonna prop that up likely, and I just knocked off a leaf. Don't do that when you're potting. So I'm going to prop that up once we get it into the new pot. It's been in this one for almost 2 years, so I'm sure that the roots have, you know, taken over, but also I know that it needs a larger pot because I need to water it every 2 to 3 days, which is quite ridiculous. Even though it is in terracotta, it still shouldn't need to be watered that frequently. Well, I'm gonna get it out of this soil first, look at the root ball, and then I'll decide what pot I'm gonna put it into. Okay, change of plans. So this root ball doesn't actually look all that healthy to me. A lot of the roots are down here in the soil, and yeah, so which means the remaining root ball isn't that large, and I don't even want to take off too much of this soil because I don't want to break these roots. The roots are really fine and hair-like, so I don't want to break them off. So what I think I'm going to do is clean out this pot that it was in and just put it right back in with some fresh soil. So I've washed out the pot, and I've decided what I'm going to do is mix this soil that I'm putting into this pot with a bit of cocoa coir. It'll help it stay moisturized, or help the soil stay moisturized for longer, because I do notice that the Pilea does not like to dry out at all, or at least not for long. And with the way I water, I need to give it a fighting chance. So before I put the soil in, I'm gonna put one of these. It's a piece of a screen, like a window screen mesh. If you can see that, put that in the bottom of the pot so that soil does not come out of it when it gets watered or fall out of the bottom of the pot. And we want to make sure that this gets potted at the same height that it was before, so I need quite a bit of soil at the bottom. Starting with a base of soil in the bottom of the pot, I'm going to add that as well as add in some cocoa coir, because like I said, I want to make sure that the soil retains enough moisture. Since I'm not one of those types of people who waters super frequently, I think mixing in some of the cocoa coir will help to keep moisture in the soil as the plant grows. And I just knocked off a leaf. Don't do that. Now I'm sticking a chopstick in the pot to help the plant stand up. That one stem that was leaning over crooked, to help that stand up. Once I have most of the soil in the pot, I'm going to top it with some of the Osmocote fertilizer. And then I like to put a small dusting of soil on top of that. I'm not sure why. I just do it maybe because I don't want to see the fertilizer crystals in there. You don't have to. And then I'm going to top it with the systemic granules. And there are instructions on the bottle that tells you how much to put in a pot for a specific size plant. So please make sure you follow those instructions. I've been doing this for a long time, so I pretty much know how to eyeball it, though I really should be measuring also. Now I'm just settling that into the plant, and then I'm going to water it a bit, and this is called watering in. So I'm watering it so that the roots settle, so that that systemic gets distributed throughout the soil and the plant is happy. And next up is the big mama, the Albo Monstera. She's been growing extremely well lately. Okay, so with this one, it is in a plastic nursery pot, but the roots are growing out of the bottom. I don't even know if you can see that, but the roots are growing out of the bottom. So I want to put it into a bigger pot, into this one, which is where it used to be. The tricky part is seeing if these roots are ready to be put into the soil as well. So look at all of these roots. Looks so nice and healthy. The question is, can I get them into this pot along with that one? So we gotta kind of see. I need to tease them apart. Alright, so we got all the soil off. Now I'm trying to see, and these are the roots from that pot. I'm trying to see how I can fit all of this into this new pot, because we don't want this to be down too low. After some fiddling to try and figure out the best way to position the roots inside the pot so that the main roots are not too low and that the roots coming off of that aerial root are still underneath the soil, I was able to adjust everything just fine. And I'm filling in the pot with some soil now, and you'll see me do the same process for all of the plants I'm potting up. I'm going to put in some soil and then top it with some of the fertilizer, put a little dusting of soil on top of that, and then top everything off with the systemic. Some of the plants will be watered thoroughly and some will just be giving a light watering, but I'll explain that a little while later. Next up is my Syngonium Macrophylla that's been growing in leca, and you can see the roots are really long. It's growing out of the pot, and I'm switching it to soil because I can better maintain the plant in soil. I'm not super familiar with leca. This is like an experiment for me. Also, I don't want to put this plant in a much larger pot to accommodate all of those huge roots. So I'm just going to switch it back to soil and add in this little propagation that only has some teeny tiny roots at the moment. So I'll just plant them up together. I'm putting a piece of mesh in the bottom of the pot just so that the soil doesn't fall through the bottom when I water it. And I'm going to place some soil into the pot to help position the plant up high enough so that these stems aren't buried too low. And then I'll do that, and Once this larger plant is actually 2 stems are secured in the pot, then I'll go ahead and add the smaller propagation in there with them. I'm just using a piece of plant Velcro here to help the stems stand up in the pot until the roots get comfortable and get settled in there. And then once that happens and they start to grow well, it shouldn't need the Velcro anymore, but I'm just doing this to help it stand up. And then you know the drill. Once everything is in here, I'm going to top it off with some fertilizer and then the systemic. Regarding the systemic, I'm using the Bonide Houseplant Insect Control. And this one is granules that you put on top of the soil, and you should be applying this about every 8 weeks. And this helps prevent or protect your plant from those types of insects that like to feed on the plant's roots or the leaves and stems. So that would be things like aphids, thrips, mealybugs, I believe, and a few other types of insects that you might find with houseplants. I'll also mention that this one does not protect against spider mites, so there are some other preventative measures you would need to put into place if your plants are susceptible to spider mites. This is the other plant I'm switching from leca to soil. It's my Rafidiphora De Cursiva, and it's growing extremely well, but again, I just don't want to have to be forced to keep bumping it up to larger pots. I think that would be very limiting for my space after a while. So I'm just going to switch it over to soil because that's what I'm most comfortable with at the moment. And I'm popping it right back into the same pot with a little bit of mesh at the bottom to prevent the soil from going through the holes. And then I'm going to pot this one up just like all the others. Okay, so this is taking much longer than anticipated. I thought I would be able to do this within about an hour or so before I started working, but that was not the case. So I did take a break. I'm now on my lunch break. I ate my lunch, and now we're gonna get back to completing these plant chores. Luckily, I only have a few of the smaller things to do. The bigger things, which were transferring those 2 plants from leca to soil, and then potting the Pilea and the Albo Monstera into their own new pots with fresh soil, that was the harder part. So now I'm gonna move on to doing the smaller plants that I have that need to go into pots that were, you know, previously propagations. But one that I'm trying to do is this pink princess, and I'm not entirely sure what pot to put it in. Also, the landscapers are here, so you might hear that in the background. I apologize. But anyway, I'm not sure what kind of pot I want to put this into. There are 4 plants, or like 4 rooted parts of this plant that I'm trying to put into the same pot. I don't want to put it into a pot that's way too big, so I'm trying to determine which size pot is going to work for this purpose. I suspect that I'm going to have to put it in a smaller pot than maybe makes a lot of sense, but I'm going to do that until the plant gets fully rooted in the soil, grows some larger, nicer leaves, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so let me show you the pink princess plants that I have. So this was the mother plant. This was the base of the plant. Before I chopped it up, it was maybe about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall. That's the top part of the plant. So this one has always grown fully green leaves for a long while, and it's still doing that. And if you notice, there's quite a bit of bruising, I would say, on some of these leaves, and that is due to low humidity. So that is an issue that I do plan to solve. You can see it a bit more like on this smaller leaf. That's an issue I do plan to solve, and I will after I get this potted up into a better environment. And then this one's really cool because it's one cutting and it's actually growing two vines or two stems from the one cutting, and one of the stems is putting out fully pink leaves, the other stem is putting out fully green leaves. So that was the original issue I was having with this pink princess, and the reason why I decided to chop it up. It was actually alternating one pink leaf, one green leaf, one pink, no real variegation on the leaves at all. So we'll see how this turns out. And actually this newer leaf, interestingly, looks like it has like a little streak. This newer pink leaf looks like it has a little streak of green on it, so maybe it will turn out variegated. We'll see. But these are the 4 plants that I need to pot together, and as you can see, due to the size of the older leaves, like this one for instance, putting these all together, I was leaning towards doing this is like a wide 4-inch pot, and I like that it's glazed on the inside so it will retain some water, some moisture. Obviously I got this from Target quite a while ago, and it does have a plug to stop it up. But originally I was gonna put it into this is a 4-inch plastic nursery pot that I would just put into here, but I'm honestly not sure how this is gonna work out. I think it's gonna be a little crowded, but we'll see. First things first, I'm going to look at all the roots to see what we're working with. I will say that removing moss from roots is one of the most annoying things ever. You have to be really gentle, and it's like the roots just latch on to the moss, and it gets to a point where it's hard to tell what's moss and what's root. So I think I generally have most of the moss off, and I don't want to pull any more of this because I don't want to break any of the roots. So I will probably just pot that into the soil with the moss like that. And I've tried to remove moss from roots under many different circumstances, like making sure the moss is really wet, making sure it's really dry. I haven't found that either of those are the better options. I feel like it doesn't really matter when you try and take moss off of roots. It's just hard in general. I do think maybe doing it while the moss is on the drier side is slightly easier, but not by much. I think maybe this is as good as this one's gonna get. I did pull off a few of the thinner roots, but listen, gotta do what you gotta do. The thicker ones are still just fine. But I don't want to be here all day. And this is the last one. I'm not going to fuss with these roots too much, just trying to get most of the soil off. Here are all 4 pieces of the pink princess that I'm gonna pot up together. I had trouble deciding what size pot to put it in, but I decided to go with a 4-inch that's wide so that the roots can settle in and it kind of grows into the pot. I want to do this until the plant grows a little more healthy with larger, fuller leaves. So I did find a little chopstick to stand this up. I put in some plant food and some of the systemic that you see me do to the other pots. And I've got it all in here. It looks crazy. I think after I water it, that's gonna help everything settle in a lot better. Also, I suspect that these older leaves, like this one here and this one, and maybe even that one, will be dying off eventually, so it won't look so weird. But this is what she looks like at the moment. And as suspected, I did run out of soil, so I'm just gonna mix some more up here to fill up the entire container. I'm sure I won't need to use all of this today, but I'll just mix it all up now so that I have it on hand for whenever I do actually need it. Here I'm taking my Syngonium Jade Satin and leaving it in the same pot, but I'm adding in more soil as well as adding in 2 cuttings that are propagated to help the plant fill out the pot a lot more. I think it looks really cute in this pot I picked up from Target. And now for my variegated burl marks. I swear this plant scares me, so I'm really not gonna mess with it. I'm just gonna loosen up the moss a bit and then pop it into a larger pot and fill around the plant with more moss. The next propagations I'm potting up are my Philodendron Rio and my Syngonium Silver Splash, and also this Philodendron Silver Stripe that is extremely tangled up with this cutting of a Philodendron Graziella that I have. It took me forever to untangle these roots, so don't do like I did and just put 2 random plants together in the same container when you're trying to root them. And I'm gonna pot them up in my same standard fashion. This one is the Philodendron Silver Stripe. Next, you're gonna see the Philodendron Rio. That's the one in the small white pot. And the Syngonium Silver Splash is the one in the small black pot. And the last of those water propagations, I'm going to take this cutting of Philodendron Graziella. The roots that grew off of this are ridiculously long, so I have to cut it because that's not going to fit in the pot well if I don't. And word of caution, it's probably not advisable to allow your water roots to grow this long. I hear that it takes them a lot longer to adjust to soil if they've grown out far too long, which is normally over about 2 inches long. My Florida Ghost has grown really well in moss, but this is another one where it's really tough to get all of the moss off the roots, so I'm not going to bother with it too much. I'm going to get most of it off and then pot it into soil. I will say I have another Florida Ghost cutting that I've been trying to root for about a year and still no dice. It's not dead, but it's still not rooted just yet. Once it roots, I'll put them both together. Okay, so the gang is all here. Everyone who was repotted today. We have a few plants over on that side, and then the majority of the plants here on this side, and then the Albo Monstera is down on the floor. I'll give you a slow pan to let you see everything in total, all of what I repotted on my plant chore day. Some of these I'm going to water very thoroughly, but others, especially the ones that were rooted in water, I'm actually just going to lightly water them because I find that method works better for me. If I soak them, I tend to overwater and then they die from root rot. It happens about 60% of the time. So in order to avoid that, I'm just going to lightly water them a bit, and then once they start showing signs that they need some water, then I'll water them, you know, in about a week or so. All right, so the Pilea, if you'll remember, I already lightly watered it, and I have it velcroed or fastened to this little chopstick to help straighten out this stalk. So hopefully that'll work. I won't water this anymore until it tells me it needs it. And then for this one, the Graziella, I will water it. It's actually time for me to water it. It was pretty dry. So I'm just gonna water it using my watering can instead of thoroughly soaking it from the top. Just water it lightly. In this watering can, I do have plant food, and the one that I use is the Dynagrow Foliage Pro. I typically tend to water with this every time I water my plants. So about once a week, once every 2 weeks, and then there are instructions on the back to tell you how to dilute it for that type of watering. So that's what's in this watering can, and that's what I watered that with, and I can tell that the water is draining from the bottom. So that is pretty decently watered. I'll push that one to the side. Like I said, the ones that were rooting in water, I just like to lightly water them. This one, the Philodendron Silver Stripe, I'm going to water that one as well. I think for this one, I'm going to put it in the sink and rinse the leaves off. And when I rinse the leaves, I'm going to try to rinse the leaves but not get any water into the actual pot. My Pink Princess, I also need to rinse these leaves off as well. So maybe I can water the whole thing all at the same time. In the sink. This was another one that was rooted in water, the Philodendron Silver Splash, so I'll just give it a little bit of water for now. Here's the Philodendron Rio. This one also needs to have its leaves brushed off or rinsed off. I'm gonna lightly water this one. Okay, we also have the Florida Ghost, and I'm going to rinse this one in the sink because that one did need to be thoroughly watered, as did the Variegated Bromarks. I'll rinse this one in the sink. Actually, you know what? I won't. I'm going to just water it in here in the pot. And oh, I forgot to mention that I changed the pot that this one is in. I put it in a cash pot that is like taller, which I think complements the tall shape of the plant a little bit better. And I just have a few stones at the bottom to help raise this one up. This one does have drainage, the nursery pot that it's in. But it's gonna sit in there, and then I'll water this. The wet moss that I put in there should help to water it as well. And these are the ones that just needed their leaves rinsed off or a thorough watering. So we'll just give her a thorough watering. Again with warm water to kind of like gently help all the roots settle in. Like they were accustomed to when they were in that little tiny pot. Water is dripping out of the bottom of this one. So she's good to go. I'm gonna let her drain there for a bit. Clean up, put everybody back in its spot, and then we're done. Though this felt like it took forever to film, it was actually kind of fun. And I did enjoy it, I have to admit. Thank you so much for following along today on my plant chore day. It has taken a lot longer than I anticipated. I was being very naive when I thought that it would only take me about an hour to get done. That was just silly. That was silly thinking, but everything is done. All of the plants are back in their respective homes, which I may show you on an upcoming plant tour. This video is just way too long. And I have not yet cleaned up my dining room table, but I'm gonna do that very soon. Gonna clear up the table, clean everything up. Again, thank you so much for watching today's video. I'll have anything I shared linked down below in the description box. And also feel free to ask me any questions that you might have down in the comments. Thank you so much again for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.